Today we're going to talk about the dangers of stress and what we can do about it, especially the dangers of stress to our kids. So let's begin and examine stress and what stress is. Now, all of us know what stress is. In fact, if you did happen to see that cute little cartoon that I posted on my Facebook page, where my daughter actually said one day, when I was, rushing around, 7 kids, right? And the hard part for me was always, I never had time to do everything, but having time even to do the important things like the laundry and the dishes. But more important than that was having time to really just relate to the people that I loved, my family. So, but anyway, in this little cartoon, it shows my daughter is trying to reach out to me when I'm rushing with a pile of laundry in a basket, and she's saying, "Mom, the only time we get together as a family is when there's an earthquake and we meet in the hall." And I thought that was so clever that she actually said that. Well, she's always been a genius, about saying things in a very clever way. But it struck me that, oh my God, is that true? Are we not really having enough time to get together? We haven't had much time together as a family. So anyway, life takes up most of your time, and it certainly is hard to make sure we take time for what's really important. The dangers of stress. Now, what is stress? Stress is when you get into a state of a hypervigilance. Your heart starts pounding. You feel like you have to be super attentive to what's going on for your survival. It's a survival mechanism when we go through stress. You may have heard of adrenaline. Your adrenaline starts pumping, and you go into fight or flight mode. It's like emergency. It's the emergency program that the body has to help us in case of danger. It's like even when you're exhausted and tired, somebody yells, "Fire!" or something, you'll immediately, boom, there's a surge of energy and you jump out of bed or whatever it is, because of the ability of our body to go into that emergency fight or flight mode. Now, so that's a good thing to have. However, when we are experiencing too much of this push, rush stuff, we can become exhausted. There's a hormone called cortisol, and cortisol starts pumping through our body. So when adrenaline starts pumping and the cortisol is telling our body survive mode, what happens is the blood stops flowing to the extremities and protects our inner organs. But one other crucial thing happens. When our being is flooded with cortisol from the stress, it also shuts down the frontal lobes, the blood flow to the frontal lobes. Now, what that does is our frontal lobes in our brain are where we have the capacity for higher thought and the ability to manage our feelings, our emotions, and to think and plan ahead and be able to operate on a higher level. And that includes thinking peaceful or thinking ahead. So it's just an immediate reaction thing. And it's kind of like war. When you're in a war, you're just, thinking of oh my God, hide, where's the bush? Or, run, or protect yourself. There's no time for reflection or thinking, oh, what a beautiful day. Oh, notice that butterfly. Oh, yes, there's something. There's no capacity for higher thought. It's all down to the reptilian mode, down to the survival mode. So that is what happens when our bodies become flooded with cortisol, and we are now in survival mode. And stress is when we are in that survival mode. Now, a little stress is good to get us going, like, oh, there's the alarm clock, time to get up. But too much stress is extremely harmful when it goes on for prolonged periods of time. And especially if in children, they have noticed that children who are under stress cannot learn as easily. Like I said, when you're in a war, there's no time for sitting around and saying, oh, how much is 5 times 6? Oh, who cares? Let's run for the hills. So stress inhibits your frontal lobe's activity. And this is the interesting thing. In infancy, and even in the womb, a mother who is under terrific stress and whose body is flooded with cortisol, it goes right through the placenta into the baby, and the baby is born with a predisposition to that feeling of stress, and also the inhibition of the frontal lobes, that they're in survival mode. And that is very hard on a newborn, and hard on the mom anyway, if she's already under stress. What we need in order to relax, in order to have a good relationship, is we need the ability to attach to others. Attachment is so important. I mean, everybody's heard about a duck. The minute it comes out of the shell, it attaches to whatever is closest to it. Now, if it's right near the mother duck, it attaches to the mother duck. And it has that feeling of, oh, good, I belong. This is where I am, and I'm supposed to be here. And so the attachment thing is important for survival. We must have a feeling of being attached in order to survive. Because every infant knows, well, they don't even have to know consciously, but every infant feels that need for attachment. When the mother's gaze is not on the baby, and they sense that, oh my gosh, she's looking the other way, she's not noticing me. A baby can't get up and walk across the floor. A baby can't do anything for itself. So a baby feels extremely vulnerable and in need of the mother's attention. Now, sometimes there's not a mother. Sometimes it's the father there. Whoever is the main caregiver must pay attention. I don't know if you remember back to when you were a baby, but I had experiences, which I've mentioned in previous videos, where I actually remembered being an infant, and I went all the way back as far as being born, where I remembered being born. But I do have a distinct memory at 2 months old where I remember my mother was in the other room, and I was laying in the crib, and I could just barely lift my head for a second, and then it was so heavy I had to drop it again. So I was just a little baby, just learning to lift its own head. So I remember hearing people laughing in the other room, and it was so wonderful. I thought, ooh, I want to go out there. I want to hear whatever they're laughing about. And I felt like, oh, goody, goody, goody. I want to come out there too. And I'd lift my head and I'd go, ah, ah, hoping my mom would come and get me. But they were laughing so loud they couldn't hear me. And so eventually I got sort of tired and I just fell back to sleep. And then in a little while, my mom came walking into the room and she picked me up and I said, oh, goody, goody, goody. Now I'll get to go in the other room and hear the funny things that they were saying. And she picked me up and she went in the other room and all the people were gone. And I was so disappointed. I wanted to hear what they were laughing at too. Now, you would never think that a baby would be aware of the feelings and the joy or what was going on around them. But I also remember looking around the house and thinking, gee, it's cleaner than I remember it was before. My mom must have had some friends over and cleaned up the house a little bit. But I remember all that. But this is interesting because I've been studying the work of Gabor Mate, and I don't know if you've heard of him. The lack of attachment can cause terrific problems later in life. And by attachment, I mean having that caregiver, somebody to bond with, who is there for you. And that means with eye contact, with being present, and having the feeling of that you are being seen, and known for who you are. And he mentions too that two gifts that we can give our children. The first one is your happiness. You don't realize what a wonderful gift that is. If you can be happy and carry your happiness with you, it's contagious. That's one of the gifts you can share with your children. I used to always tell my kids, bring your happiness with you or you won't find it when you get there. But anyway, and it's sometimes hard to be happy, especially when you're working so hard and you just don't have any time for yourself. Now, I have something to say about the practice of happiness, whether you feel like it or not. My daughter, Lisa, the funny one who said, Mom, the only time we get together as a family is when there's an earthquake and we meet in the hall. She also, she was very shy when she was little and she had to have a job. So she applied at Trader Joe's and she said, Mom, I don't know how to be friendly. They told me I had to be friendly all the time and smile and be happy to these people. And I don't know how to do that. I'm so scared. And I said, well, just pretend. Just fake it till you make it. So she said, okay. And she said that an astonishing thing happened. She went to work. She would force herself to smile and be friendly and talk to people. And she said, at first when I started the day, I wasn't happy. But by the end of the day, it was like I really was happy. And all she was doing was pretending. Okay, so what would stop us from acting happy? It ends up making yourself happy too. So that's gift number one. Give them the gift of your happiness. Gift number two, the gift of your presence. Your presence is the greatest present you can give. And when I say your presence, I mean to really be there, to be aware when you're in their presence. And he mentioned, Gabor Mate mentioned something else interesting. He said that a lot of times the mistakes that he made as a dad was that when he was with them as they were infants, babies, he kept thinking, oh, I wish they would hurry up and grow up so that I could relate to them intellectually. But what he didn't realize is that he was missing out on the very best years when you can bond with someone. The first 3 years are so important because maybe they can't give anything to you intellectually, but you can still relate and be in their presence. So it's very important. You know, they say that gazing into a baby's eyes is extremely important. And when they measured the physiological responses in an infant, when the mom was holding the baby and gazing into its eyes and laughing, and the baby was experiencing like a certain relaxation in the body, and everything was flowing well, and all these markers of health and well-being. And then when the mother looked away or got on her phone or took her energy away from the child, all of a sudden the child's like anxiety level went up, and all of the indicators indicated the baby was going into a state of stress, feeling as though, oh no, nobody's paying attention to me. So you can't say, well, suck it up. You learn to pay attention to yourself. That's what a baby needs. They need that attention. Now, what happens is if they don't get it when they're little, then as they get older, they're still searching for it. They're still searching for attention. And it ends up, when they're in school, they're the ones that act out. They're the ones that, have ADD, or attention deficit disorder. That's why they call it that. It looks like they can't pay attention, but what it really is that they're searching so desperately for attention that they can't focus on anything else until they get it. So that's one of the reasons why my art nonprofit, edudesigns.org, the reason why we have such success with kids, because they've found that when a kid is engaged with in something where an adult is paying attention to them, suddenly the child feels secure, maybe for the first time in a while. And art has been proven to improve brain development because it helps the person relax. It helps them feel like, I can do something and enjoy, and then that makes the brain work better. So that's why art is it's a stress reliever, and it's so powerfully wonderful in boosting intelligence in children. And because when I'm there and I engage with the children, they have a sense of feeling, I'm paying attention to them and giving them something that they didn't have, which was this, love that for that moment, I am there paying attention to them. So it's a wonderful experience that they enjoy. And then the teachers all say, oh my gosh, I've never seen the kids so focused, so engaged. That's the word, focus, engaged. So that's what we can give our kids, our presence and our happiness. So, how do we avoid stress? Woohoo! Okay, now this is important because we're all under stress, aren't we? In some way or another. And just like we had to make the decision to be happy, we also have to make the decision to live with less stress. But how do we do it? There's so much to do. There's the endless laundry pile. There's the dishes that never get finished. We're all shoveling mud uphill, aren't we? Okay, well, here's what we can do. Okay, first of all, you might not like this one. Okay. Lower your expectations. Okay, lower your expectations. Okay, now ask yourself, is it good enough? If it's good enough, that's good enough. When my kids were little, and I remember I had 7 of them, so I had to really lower my expectations of what I could get accomplished. My idea of matching socks was 1 on each foot. And we had the Bermuda sock triangle in the middle of the coffee table in the living room of all the socks that couldn't match. But anyway, that's another story. But you know what? Those socks are gone. And that doesn't matter because the most important things, the kids themselves, are here. So a lot of times I'd pay attention to the kids versus cleaning the house or doing things that were important, but they were lower on the totem pole. So my kids' emotional well-being was more important to me than anything else. So anyway, that's one thing. So lower your expectations of what you can get done, okay? That's number 1. And ask yourself, is it good enough? If it's good enough, it's good enough. Okay, next thing we can do to help our children so that we can be present, be interruptible. Okay. One of the biggest mistakes that I felt sad about was one day when my daughter came into the room. Now, I had a little studio where I was doing my artwork because I had a job. You know, I worked at Warner Brothers, at Disney, it's in Hanna-Barbera, and all these different studios in town for 27 years. And the wonderful thing was that they'd let me work at home. I'd grab up some work in the week, in the beginning of the week, and take it home and then bring it back at the end of the week. And I always got my work done, so there was never a problem. But getting that work done required me to sometimes have help with a babysitter if the kids were not at school, like say during the summertime or something. I'd have to hire somebody to help watch them while I was in my little room, my studio room. And many times I would end up having to help with the kids too. And it would end up, I'd stay up till 2 in the morning. So this one time I was trying to be more organized and saying, look, you're staying up till 2 at night to make up for what you're not doing during the day because you're, you know, trying to make it better for the kids. So I was exhausting myself and I said, okay, I'm going to be organized and I'm going to be like a business person. So I was in my little studio doing my work and I heard crying outside the door. And the babysitter came in and said, oh, she wanted to see you. And I thought, oh, you know, here's another interruption. So she came in and just, you know, say, Mommy, can I sit with you in your office? And I'm going, ah. And I'm thinking to myself, be businesslike, you pay this babysitter to take care of her. So suck it up. Don't give in. Be, tough. And don't let her interrupt you. Got to train these kids. So I said, no, honey, I can't do that right now. And she went, ah! And she freaked out and ran. And the babysitter actually had to drag her out of the room. And I felt so horrible. The rest of the day, I was going, oh my God, I'm such a terrible person. How could I do that to my daughter? Well, after an emotionally exhausting day, then later on, this was like a year later or something, she said, Mom, remember the time when you wouldn't let me into your office and all I wanted was a hug? And I said, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me? And would you like that hug now? And she said, no, it expired. It expired. And I thought, oh my gosh, I lost my chance forever. Well, that's what happens sometimes. If we don't grab those moments of love when they're there. Now, she did eventually forgive me, and I made it up to her, and I hugged her, and I told her I'm so sorry and everything. But still, one little hug at that moment would have solved the whole problem. I could have just said, oh, honey, give me a hug. Go back in the other room. I'm sorry I'm working. I wish I could be with you. But, there's always a way that you can do things if you can connect to your heart and your mind at the same time. And then you won't have to fall victim to that, being in your head and forgetting your heart. Now, so be interruptible. And the next thing you can do, okay, this is really important, okay? Get energy. Get more energy. And I'm not talking about like buy Monster drinks or something. Do less and sleep more. They find that cortisol, one of the side effects of cortisol, too much stress, is it makes people gain weight. Why? It's because your body is saying, oh my gosh, we're in fight or flight mode. We might as well, let's store all the energy we can. We might need it. So your body's packing on the pounds. And I want you to think of something. Look at the skinny people you know, if you can find any these days. Most skinny people are not the high functioning type A people. They're more relaxed, except for a few wiry ones that just have genes like that. A lot of skinny people are folks that are more laid back. And so anyway, I am a terrible example of getting enough sleep. At least I was when I was younger. Because when my kids were little and I had to work at the same time, I was getting 4 to 6 hours a night. And I was always exhausted. But I was also 25 pounds heavier. Now, when I finally retired, everything, calmed down in my life. And now I get more sleep than I've ever gotten in my entire life. And I feel better, oh my gosh, than I've ever felt in my life. And I lost the weight really fast. So getting sleep is really important. But it's So what I'm saying is, forget worrying about the house. Listen to your body. If you're tired, rest. When the kids sleep, you sleep. I know that's good advice. And I didn't follow it when my kids were little, but I learned the hard way that I'd say, oh, just push a little harder. Well, if you've gotten enough sleep, a job that would take an hour can take 5 minutes if you have the energy and you're full of energy. So do what you can to get the energy by getting more sleep. The next thing is prepare. Once you get enough sleep and your mind is clear, think ahead. Prepare for what's coming next. So they're going to be hungry, say at 5 or something. And so you can prepare, look ahead for when those periods of stress are going to hit you and hit the kids, and then prepare. Now, I love this little saying. It says, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and take whatever comes philosophically. Take things philosophically. So whatever comes, take it philosophically. If you're doing your best, that's all you can do, right? It's the best you can do. How can you do any more than your best? So stop finding fault with yourself. Stop, what do they say? Shoulding all over yourself. I should be a perfect mother. I should do this. I should do that. It'll never happen, okay? But get used to the idea. Yes. There are long-range effects of stress. One of the effects of too much stress is diabetes. And of course, there's ADHD, the attention deficit disorder. And we all have seen that. And of course, there's heart attacks and all the other problems that we have. Now, so that's why we want to avoid it at all costs. Now, if it ends up that your house is a little messier and you just have to think to yourself, long range, what's going to happen 10 years down the line? Like my old cartoon that I drew a picture of a gravestone, and on the gravestone it said, wouldn't it be sad if all they had to say about you when you're gone is, she had a clean house? But we all feel like shamed or whatever if our houses are a mess. That's why my daughter said one day, she picked up the phone. This was in the old days when phones were on the wall, hanging on the wall. And she said, oh my gosh, Hildy's coming over. Quick, make the house look like nobody lives here. One of the ladies from our church was coming over, and we had like 10 minutes to straighten up the place. Well, we did it. In 10 minutes, you could do a lot. But anyway, I'm not advocating being a slob. I'm just saying that sometimes you have to sacrifice certain things to make room for the more important things, right? So anyway, I love you all, and I'm hoping that some of these things are helpful, because the first 3 years of your child's life will set the foundation for the rest of their life and the rest of their feeling of being important enough to pay attention to and to prevent ADD and stuff like that. Now, if it's too late because you already have those problems, well then that's something you'll work on. These become the issues of life that we face, and we can overcome them. So let's find the roots in ourselves for our own issues. And also, because we're moms, we have the power. We have the power to give our children a good foundation. And all we can do is the best we can do. So be happy. that you have done so much already, and that you're here today. Well, thank you very much for being here, and I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful week, and we'll talk next week.